welcome to this explainer. Okay, you know the exact feeling. You drive past that same corner gas station every single day. The prices are flashing on that huge bright sign, cars are constantly lined up at the pumps, and you just know hundreds of gallons are flowing out every hour. So you do the math in your head, and it seems so obvious, right? At $3 a gallon with 10 pumps going nonstop, these places must literally be printing money. You probably look at it and think, man, I want a piece of that. How hard can it really be?
Okay, let's dive into this, because here is exactly where most people stop thinking. And it's also where the reality of this business gets super fascinating. We're going to go ahead and shatter that illusion right now. The gas station you're picturing in your head, the one where money just effortlessly flows like fuel through a nozzle, it simply doesn't exist. The actual business is way stranger, much more complicated, and honestly, incredibly fragile. So for this explainer, we're going to break it all down into 5 quick parts. 1, the gas station illusion. 2, the 5 types of ownership. 3, the thin fuel margins. 4, where real profits hide. And 5, hidden costs and buried risks.
Starting with Section 1, the gas station illusion, because the business is definitely not what it seems.
If you ever actually decided to buy an existing station, you'd probably assume you're just paying for some pumps and a cash register, right? Well, acquiring one can easily run you anywhere from $500,000 to $2.5 million. Why so much? Because you aren't just buying pumps. You are buying highly complex, heavily regulated, and pretty fragile infrastructure. You're acquiring massive underground storage tanks, usually about 3 of them, buried deep beneath the concrete, and each one holds 10 to 20,000 gallons of highly flammable liquid. Plus, you've got the delivery pipes, the massive canopy structure that's specially engineered to handle local wind and snow loads, the commercial refrigeration systems, and just a literal mountain of environmental permits. Honestly, the physical infrastructure is often way more valuable and much harder to get than the actual fuel.
Moving to Section 2, 5 types of ownership. Who actually runs the station?
Now, we really need to focus on this because it is the absolute core of understanding the entire gas station industry. Before you spend a single dime, you have to realize that when you walk into any station in America, you are standing in one of 5 completely different business arrangements, and whichever one you're in dictates the entire financial reality for the owner. First, you have the fully independent owner. They own the land, the building, the punks, the whole shebang. Second is the franchise operator, running a brand and spot like a Shell or a BP. Third, you've got company-owned, where a huge corporation like 7-Eleven owns it and just pays hourly employees to run it. Fourth is dealer-operated, where the big oil company owns the dirt but leases the actual operation out. And fifth, the lease operator.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the drastic contrast between the extremes. Take a fully independent owner. They have maximum control, they can buy their fuel from literally anyone, and they keep every single dollar of profit. But, of course, they also hold all the risk. Now, contrast that with a franchise operator. They've got to cough up a $30,000 to $50,000 upfront fee just to use a brand name on their sign, plus they pay ongoing monthly royalties. Sure, they get guaranteed fuel supply and national marketing, but they're bound by incredibly strict rules on how everything looks and operates day to day.
And then there's the lease operator model, which is usually structured as a triple net lease. This is wild because it's where a real estate investor actually owns the physical property. The operator, who is technically the tenant, pays the rent, the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. So the investor basically just sits back, relaxes, and collects a check, while the operator carries all that daily stress and operational risk. They are playing in the exact same industry, but they're running fundamentally different businesses.
Which brings us to Section 3, the thin fuel margins. We're going to follow the fuel from the rack right to the pump.
To really grasp why those different ownership structures matter so much, we have to follow the gasoline itself from the regional storage terminals, which industry folks call the rack, to the pump. There are costs eating away at the profit at every single step of this journey before you even sell a drop. Let's break down a typical $3.11 gallon of gas. Boom, 60% of that price goes straight to crude oil. Taxes, both state and federal, eat up another 17.5%. Distribution takes 11% and refining takes 9%. So what is actually left for the gas station? A gross margin of just 2.5%. We are talking about a tiny 30 to 35 cent sliver of gross profit per gallon. And remember, that is before paying for a single employee, the electricity, or any maintenance.
And this brilliantly illustrates a famous economic dynamic called rockets and feathers. Since the margins are so painfully thin, when wholesale prices go up, retail prices have to rise instantly, shooting up like a rocket. The owner simply can't afford to absorb that loss, not even for a day. But when wholesale prices fall, retail prices drop slowly, just drifting down like a feather. Why? because the station is desperately trying to recoup all the margin they lost during the previous price spike, just to survive the local price wars.
And if you want to know just how brutal fuel sales really are, get this. Roughly 85% of all fuel purchases are made with plastic. The bank that issued the credit card the customer used actually earns more per gallon in swipe fees than the station owner earns in actual net profit. Swipe fees eat up about 8 cents per gallon, which leaves the station owner with a net profit closer to just 10 to 15 measly cents.
Okay, Section 4, where real profits hide. These are the secret engines inside the convenience store. So you're probably wondering, if the fuel barely makes a dime, how on earth do these places survive? Well, here is the massive twist. The fuel you're buying is basically an afterthought to the people who own the place. The fuel is literally just a giant advertisement to get you to pull onto the property. Check this out. While fuel makes up over 67% of a station's total revenue, it only contributes 38.6% of the gross profit. The inside of the store, the coffee, the candy, the energy drinks, it makes up a way smaller slice of the revenue, but it generates over 61% of the total gross profit. More than 6 out of every $10 of actual profit comes from inside that building. Think about a standard 12-gallon vehicle fill-up. After you account for the wholesale cost of the gas, those pesky credit card swipe fees, and the operational overhead, the station owner nets somewhere between 40 and 60 cents on that entire transaction. Now, prepare yourself for the ultimate aha moment. Pumping 12 gallons of gas brings in about $37 in revenue, but only nets the owner 40 to 60 cents. But what about one single cup of brewed coffee? It costs the owner about 23 cents to make, sells for $3 to $5, and boasts a gross margin of over 90%. You heard that right. A single cup of coffee generates more bottom-line profit for the owner than pumping 12 entire gallons of gasoline. And smart operators definitely don't stop at just coffee. They build an entire high-margin ecosystem on the property. They add automated car washes, which regularly exceed a 50% profit margin. They put in ATMs for totally passive commissions and lottery terminals to drive steady foot traffic. And lately, modern stations are aggressively installing EV chargers. The brilliant part about EV chargers isn't really the charging fee, it's the 30-minute dwell time. A driver sits there for half an hour, gets bored, walks inside, and boom, they buy a high-margin sandwich and a coffee. This dynamic right here is exactly why regional chains like Wawa and Casey's are so insanely successful. I mean, Casey's operates one of the largest pizza chains in the entire country, right inside their convenience stores. And Wawa has an absolute cult following for its made-to-order hoagies. With prepared food margins running at 50 to 60%, these companies realized a long time ago that they are actually in the restaurant business. They just happen to sell fuel outside to get you through the front door. Finally, Section 5. Hidden costs and buried risks. Basically, what keeps owners up at night. So the crucial point we keep coming back to is that revenue is definitely not profit. The gap between the money coming in and the actual take-home pay is just eaten alive by massive, relentless expenses. Let's look at utilities, for example. The average convenience store pays $23,000 a year in electricity alone. Think about it. You've got walk-in beer coolers running 24/7, those super bright outdoor canopy lights burning all night, and the constant air conditioning just battling doors that open and close every 2 minutes. Then you have to factor in the intense mechanical stress and incredibly strict EPA regulations. Buried right beneath the concrete are tanks holding thousands of gallons of gasoline. Owners are forced to maintain double-walled tanks, automatic gauging systems, vapor recovery units on the dispensers, and expensive statistical software just to detect super slow leaks. Plus, the ongoing compliance and pollution liability insurance costs thousands every single year. And what if something actually goes wrong underground? Well, it is entirely your problem. As of early 2026 data, there have been over 583,000 confirmed underground storage tank releases in the U.S. The average cleanup cost per site is a staggering $154,000. And the scariest part, when you buy a gas station, you inherit whatever environmental liability is already sitting in the soil from the previous owner. So look, ultimately, a well-run, prime location independent station can definitely net anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 a year. But hitting those numbers requires absolutely obsessive cost management. As they say in the industry, the location, the daily traffic, and the ease of access determines the ceiling of what you can earn. But the operation, meaning how well you manage those razor-thin margins and push those high-profit store items, that determines how close you actually get to it. So I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you pull in for fuel, look closely at the layout. Look at the EV chargers out front, the size of the coffee station, and the fresh food counter. Ask yourself, are you really standing in a gas station? Or are you standing in a brilliantly disguised retail store that simply uses $4 cups of coffee to pay its massive bills and $3 gallons of gas just to fill the parking lot?